Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and hey, you can do this. Because this is Airwindows Sinew. Now we're jumping around a little bit because I have not yet finished out the Why Not series filters. But I'm jumping this ahead because it involves a number of different things. One of them is that without knowing it, you're hearing a sneak preview of some of my reverb stuff that I'm going to be doing. As you can hear, I've got drums, and that's fake. That's not a real drum. This is part of the process of me learning to do reverbs in such a way that I can approximate those precocity samples I made. And this exact thing is it's a kind of a jump ahead, and what you're hearing is a super bright, detailed version of that, because that's what I'm using to hear what the algorithm is actually doing. There's very little space, there's very little filtering, it's not processed in any way, it's not using the special precocity tricks I've learned about. It's just the raw algorithm. And the idea is to be able to make a ambient space, the ones that are smaller, because I had an easier time doing the bigger ones. When it started to get to really small spaces or chambers, it started to get a little more problematic. So what we've got here is just increasingly small spaces. And this is a new algorithm that I just came up with yesterday for really small spaces. And I've not been able to make anything sound as good as this for really tiny spaces yet. But so you're going to start seeing reverbs coming too. Now what's Sinew though? Sinew is another damn slew filter. Yep, that's right. More slew processing. People don't seem to do as much of that, but here's the thing. Sinew is called that because the beginning of the word is sine. It's like sine slew. And that's because this is a slew clipper that is clipping harder as you get closer to the edges of the waveform. And the idea is that this should approximate the sound of analog tape. That's right. This is most likely going to go into the revisiting of ToTape that is going to come out. And here's what it sounds like. You start bringing it in, and the quieter sounds, the quieter high frequency sounds won't get stepped on until they are really loud. So you can get into this sort of thing without the processing. You got this with it. You can hear where it starts really stepping on things. So this would be the sound of Sinew smashing the heck out of drums. And it's still letting through some of the highs, but stuff over towards the extremes of it. This is going to be like a bias control, and this would be a heavily over-biased sound. You can't put too much high frequencies towards the extremes because they're going to clip faster. That's how biasing works. Biasing in tapes works by throwing a high frequency sound in there, and if it saturates the tape is going to saturate faster up towards the extreme limits of the magnetization. Towards the middle, you're still going to be able to have the bias cover all of its bases, so that's a really darker sound. But why don't we jump ahead towards something a lot more artificial, because this is already, it's a reverby sound that's natural. The idea was to show you that it sounds natural when it is extremely clipped in like that. And I think it does a pretty good job of sounding natural under extreme circumstances. But we can also skip over towards Old Faithful Alien Kittens. Now listen to what it does. You first hear it on that snare. We can also hear it in the hat a little bit, but it's not super duper obvious, even though it's pretty extreme, because the snare is putting out more high frequency transients. We can push it farther. Now we're slamming the ToTape, and of course this doesn't have anything but the bias control. This is not your full tape emulation yet, but what I'm going to be doing is including this as a bias control. And as we start over biasing, you start to hear it sort of smushing that snare in there a little bit. The hats aren't as loud as the snare, so the hats aren't getting stepped on as fast. Take it back out again. Big difference, huh? And of course we can smash the hell out of it, of course, since it's one of those little building block plugins. This is one of those things where I just let you play with the raw materials of what goes into the more elaborate plugins. We're doing a lot of those, but I have a bunch of elaborate plugins coming. You know, October, November, or so on. It's going to be a pretty big deal as far as stuff coming out. So, for the time being, I hope you enjoy Sinew. And you can throw this on stuff for a sort of cleaner, higher fidelity version of certain kinds of saturation, certain kinds of coloration that you might want. And again, let's play with that snare now as we've got this going. And now we're stepping on the snare, but the hat is relatively unaffected. We can squish it real nice, or open it back up again like this. To fully open. And there you have it, really. I hope you like Sinew. This is another in those me buying a little time for me to work on things like Console MC, which is most of the work, although the way this usually goes, as you've heard, I am currently switching from the refinement of Console MC to dive into those reverbs again, because there's all the Bricasti stuff that I promised that you're still going to get. It's not going to be exact clones, but it's going to be me nailing the vibe and the space and the atmosphere of that stuff with my own sounds and textures. And those textures on the bright side, because this is not a final result. This is the brightest, airiest, like glass room style chamber that I can make for the purposes of dialing in the sound. And this is what my reverbs are sounding like in their sort of glass wall dance studio kind of thing. As we have smaller ones, and this is a smaller room than I've ever been able to do before, plausibly. Or larger ones. And that's a larger space. And I'm busily working even now on generating even larger spaces so that I can do some of that. Like, all of these spaces are a fifth to a tenth of the size that I've been previously able to use. And that's going to find its own uses. Some of these are going to fit in nicely for stuff like doing your Bricasti blue and red rooms and so on, because those are a special kind of ambience that I wasn't able to do previously. And if I darken this down a little bit, this is probably going to get me into the zone in a way where I'm going to be able to use it and color it until it's replicating the spatiality that you've come to need from something really expensive like a full-blown Bricasti reverb. And once I've got that worked out, I can sell the Bricasti and maybe like fix the siding of my house. I hope you like Sinew, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.